Welcome to BetaCodex Live in this now that is now on November 2nd, 2023. My name is Ryan Erickson. Those of you who have been here occasionally and consistently know who I am as part of the BetaCodex network and associates therein and of Red 42, a consulting and contributing artist for Red 42. I am happy to be here today to talk about the topic of control. What do we mean by that? What kind of control are we talking about in organizations and maybe outside? And what does that mean? What implications do we take from controlling, being controlled? What kind of control structures and possibilities are there? That's what is turning me on about that topic this morning. And hopefully it will be also interesting to you and to this person on the right-hand side of your screen, Niels Flagging. Hello, Niels. How are you this chilly morning of November?
Hello, Ryan. I'm good, but winter is coming in Germany, so yeah, it's not as sunny as it should be outside. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, we have to do some trip to Florida or so, and do some podcasting from there together, maybe to get some sun.
Oh, that would be nice. So of course now for those of you who know and I've talked to, I am moving from the warm southeast of the U.S. to the rather more frigid Midwest. Yes,
Cray.
But for me, it's all the warmth of that place is nostalgia. It is not necessarily the air or the snow and all that kind of stuff, but it is a warm place. And before we dig into the lovely topic, I have something to share and show, and that is my shirt for today.
Okay.
Is
be yourself unless you can be Tony Levin. Always be Tony Levin.
Yes.
Did you produce that, or is that Tony Levin?
No, Debbie found it for me, and and in preparation for the Peter Gabriel show.
You found it. It's a special shirt. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not a concert shirt. It was something that she found for me, and was so totally it was right. Purple. It's got Tony Levin on it. Totally
fantastic. I'm a big. Our listeners may not know this, but we are both pretty big Tony Levin fans. Not because he's a fabulous bass player and Chapman stick player, of course. Yeah. Which is a rare instrument, and he's an excellent player. I saw him live only once with the Stickman, his own band, and it was fabulous. I went so close to the stage to take a few photos that he got kind of confused playing. Went so close. I mean, he's a photographer as well. He should know that photo-taking fanatics exist, right? Because he's one himself. But it was too close, so I kind of had to back off.
That the idea, artists and their relationship with flash photography is certainly a big deal. And again, one of my favorite artists, Keith Jarrett, he is, oh my gosh, he's at another level in terms of antipathy for the photographic capture and the intrusion into
he's one of these. I stay in my zone, musicians.
Yeah, very serious.
Tony Levin, of course, is an excellent photographer, professional photographer himself, right? He does exhibitions about his photography from the Peter Gabriel tours and so on. So he knows.
Yes, he knows. So that was a little. Yeah, I love it. So the topic of today being control. So now we're going to exert a little bit of control over this space here and talk about this topic. What came up for me is, and why I wanted to bring this in, said a little bit in the intro, was there's a lot of talk in our space about decentralization and about organizational democracy and this power with idea as a response to command and control.
Yes.
Right? And there is a lot of talk about command and what it is to be a commander or a leader in whatever way you consider it to be, and not so much about the dynamic of control, or at least maybe that I see in the dialogue. And what does it mean to be a leader and to have control? And what kind of controls plural, are necessary in a decentralized organization. So that's the first thing. So what kind of controls are we talking about when we're talking about beta organizations? If we're not talking about command and control, do this, we are talking about a different kind of control.
Yes. And when we say beta organization, we mean highest levels of self-organization, highest levels of decentralization, high levels of high levels of agility or leanness, those kind of things, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So do you want to first talk about control in command and control, or in Taylorist pyramid, bureaucratic, hierarchical organization, or how do we start this?
So the Taylor thing, I think that's a good place to go, because it starts out, but there was before Ford and Taylor got together, and before the manufacturing boom that happened, there was a sense of a lack of control. And that lack of control in the workplace was a problem. And there was this idea of productivity and efficiency. Taylor talks about this soldiering, the people that just kind of slacking off in the work, and that there was, and Taylor, as you know from your research into him, was very much about process and order and bringing order. So
Yes.
There was uncontrol, and then Taylor comes in with scientific management and observation and methods of control to bring more productivity into the workplace.
Yes. Can I add to that?
Oh, please. So the origins of control in the workplace.
Yes, yeah, and you framed it beautifully. Some change occurred at the times of Frederick Taylor. Frederick Taylor made an attempt at establishing different kinds of control. But I would not say that. Of course, this is a longer. We might have a longer debate about the history of all this. But to add an opposed view to what you just said, maybe Taylor did not establish control for the first time in organizations. He was a creator of new kinds of control, which then again we have to do now. And I think you beautifully mentioned that Frederick Taylor talked dismissively about the soldiering, the sloppiness, and the lack of responsibility, the lack of even appearing at the workplace properly, and so on. I think that's the meaning of soldiering. Sadly, a word that has gone lost. It's not used anymore, right?
No.
But I would say soldiering is back. Today we have soldiering in command and control Taylorist organization. It's the same. The same version of control has occurred, I think. But to be more specific, when Frederick Taylor appeared on the scene in the 1890s, and when he created his system of scientific management, I think there was some kind of control on the shop floor, but it was executed by the masters in the crafts manufacturing sense. So yeah.
We lost Dale's network.
Unqualified.
We lost you at masters.
Yeah. So the masters on the shop floor had control, and the masters, the crafts masters from the crafts manufacturing age, you had these qualified people with mastery, in a certain craft, and they were managing the factory, the shop floor, the best way they could, but it was more based on crafts manufacturing style. So they had their individualistic styles, all these masters on the shop floor, and then they had these low qualified or non-qualified workers that they sometimes hired at the factory door every morning, right? Yeah. And fired in the afternoon. So there was control, but it didn't work. And I think today we have the same. This is the historical echo when Frederick Taylor observed that the kind of control that they had in pre-Taylorist industrial age companies was insufficient and bad. Lack of standardization was a huge problem that Taylor addressed effectively, I think. Yeah, not optimally, but effectively. And today we also have an inappropriate lack of control. Today that control is exerted by managers, you might say consultants as well. Consultants, managers, executives, but it doesn't really work anymore, right? We have sloppiness has returned to organizations and loss of control in a way, but it's not non-control, right? It's just sloppy. We have a tyranny of rules, of managers, of plans, of targets, of bonuses and incentives, a tyranny of committees. Most organizations. I just talked with a client this week, and one of these clients told me they just don't have time beyond 30-minute meetings. They have their calendars full. Nobody gets shit done because they have so many meetings. And I replied, no, but that's all committees, right? That's not even work that's getting done in the meetings. It's just committees. So it's like Soviet style.
Talking about the work instead of doing the work.
Exactly.
This is a huge criticism of agile software development and what has happened in the agile world. There's a lot about talking
and
not
SAFe and other scaled agile frameworks brought back the committee style of managing.
Mm-hmm.
What was once waterfall is now SAFe. SAFe is just waterfall having grown back, taking back the power of evil in organizations. And the same, I think, can be said of the ASSI methods, sociocracy, etc., which also are all about, they are not about teams. Those circles aren't teams, they're just committees. So we have the sloppiness of command and control bureaucracy and hierarchical terror has returned in the shape of circles and committees, non-work stuff.
The circling, I think, is an interesting thing, that it's that illusion of collegial relationship. And when you have circles upon circles upon circles that are within this pyramidal structure, that it kind of reduces the power of that. Now, if we going back to Taylor again, as we move into the lack of control, the need for standards, I think the first class worker of Taylor says, oh, we're going to look at the first class worker, and we're going to observe what makes his work better, and then we're going to standardize that step, and give some control structure to what's happening, at work. And at least that's the way I interpreted that in the step-by-step management. And so then that control, that sense of control, and that mechanistic view, we can control these things. We can maybe do some prediction with the machines. And if we can predict people's actions and the jerks that they do, and then we predict the machines, we can predict the productivity of the auto parts and all of that stuff. And we create so much stuff into the world that's produced. And in this whole cycle of, we can control. The more control we have, we can reduce costs. We have the incremental cost of producing, supposedly, the incremental cost goes down producing a widget in a factory. You have a large expenditure to gain control to produce yellow widgets, and then the incremental cost to produce blue widgets is a lot lower. And that's the benefit of control there. And we had seen in the industrial age, up until about 1970, right?
Exactly.
Then we could do that, and the consumer culture fed that. And so the purpose of control is to be more productive, and it happened that. But what happened to the worker and the individuals and their sense of pride in work, joy at work, in that period from 1910 to 1970, as the control structures became that they were kind of squishing out the air in organizations, as I like to call it. But so then we're in 1970, and what happens with control in the workplace?
Yeah, I think you described that perfectly, very neatly. I think up to the 1970s, when processes were predominantly blue, complicated, you could control the work and the processes through standards, rules, control of time, movements, even by commanding, right? Punishing and so on. So that worked fairly well. It wasn't never humanistic, but it worked effectively in a way, in a world of predominantly blue value creation. And then with the dawn of the knowledge age, complexity returns into value creation, after the historically relatively brief period of the industrial age, 70, 100, 120 years. So we need complexity control, so to speak, or complexity control that's fit for a complex world. And this kind of personal control, time control, we see this in the discussion, in the usually dumb discussion about working at home or in the office. It's quite ridiculous, really, because if you understand that work today is predominantly complex and non-standardizable in these ways, you have to measure outputs and not inputs or process. if the work is highly complex, then you cannot measure process incidents so much. This, by the way, is one of the reasons why stuff like Scrum was invented, created, right? As a method, as an overall
empirical process control as the
and self-control in the team that's not based on milestones, but on iterative reflections, and agreements instead of decisions, and not personal control by managers, but agreements with an external client, with a client or the process owner, product owner. Yeah. So
that's the label on the bottle.
Of course, this was soon converted into, of course. And but all critique of Scrum aside, the agile approaches, of course, as well as Lean and so on, and Beta, of course, very strongly, very very consistently, we try to establish different kinds of controls, which makes it even more ironic that fixed target methods, like the terrible thing, I have bashed this often.
Okay, I know the OKRs, MBOs.
It still tries to establish process control and input control instead of output control. For example, if you have a group of lawyers, you should not measure neither their time nor how long it takes for them to do a process. You just have to check the output process, the quality of the output, and the output volume. How many processes? How many
work product?
How many products did you find us? And you don't have to check their time. You don't have to check for process or milestones. You just have to check the output.
Well, that would that is heresy to the lawyer class who charges $1,500 an hour or whatever for their
sure. Well, charging is a different matter, right? Because how to charge
pricing,
but in principle, it's this time-based charging, the non-value based way of charging, that kind of work is also in conflict with modern contemporary approaches to knowledge work, and this will kick the lawyers back in the butt now that we have AI, and AI of course it's not AI, it's AI is going to do the complicated work like drafting contracts and so on. But back to the question of control, I think we have to rethink controls away from process control, input control, budgets, and so on. We have discussed this tons of times, right? You don't need plans to control people. You shouldn't have individual incentives, because as the work is much more complex now than in the 1960s and early 70s, we should focus on results. Ideally, team results, and of course, team results. That's what we call relative targets. Team results, not individual results, and not process or input factors.
Team results and market competition, and with other organizations in the sphere of activity, right? So you're competing, and I know there's an internal the sportsmanship idea, and again, I have another frame for it, internal to an organization, that friendly competition on a team basis, internal to an organization, which having different measures, not. But the competition that happens now in terms of the climbing the control hierarchy to say, I now have status, I now am affiliated with a group of managers, and now I have authority to control people and get more authority and status and compensation, all that stuff. The more I can control, the better I do in that game. Whereas in a fully decentralized organization with controls, right? So I want to talk about some of the controls, maybe specifically in self-organized environments, the control is really the market. I think you were talking about that, yes, but now there's a difference between the market, a sense into the market for identifying a market need, a team at the periphery choosing to garner resources expediently and to deliver to a market need, and to say, that's in control, I'm going to meet that. And that piece of market control I got. Now, what you talked about in our hatchery podcast yesterday, I think there's an additional piece of control. Well, the investors, the board, the boss of the CEO, right? Yes. And here, as I had understood it, they are not part of the organization.
Yes.
And you talked about that, and that for a board to be imposing on an organization to say, you need to meet these targets, these targets, these targets. That's not market control. That's a group of individuals trying to do steering from the outside with their forecasts and their
Yes,
targets.
it's intrusion, yeah, really, and
Yeah,
not correct control. Yeah, and that has become common, right? In
yeah.
some companies, at least,
Well, it's
apparently.
pervasive here in the U.S. I mean, that was an assumption that broke for me yesterday, and that because the thought is that, well, in a hierarchy, the CEO's got a boss. Even though the CEO is ostensibly has control
Yes,
over other C levels, middle management, and the whole organization. And this is the frame yesterday was, oh well, the CEO also has a boss, and that boss is the board because the board can fire the CEO.
yes, yes. I think this is a very interesting topic about the loss of control that's currently, or the sloppiness of control that's emerging in organizations today. I think this relates well to our whole theme of beta and our little podcast here. As long as command and control Taylorist pyramid model of organizing is not overcome by organization, as long as this transformation doesn't happen. Of course, the wastefulness, the misery within organizations and of all stakeholders of organizations is growing. It's increasing. Why? Because the complexity doesn't go away because you ignore it.
Bad news doesn't get better at bad news doesn't get better with age. So says my friend Joe Little.
Exactly.
Joe, if you're watching, so I learned that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You either go with the times or you go with the times, right? So as long as organizations rely on command and control and steering, the quagmire, the misery will increase, the tensions, the pressure will increase to fix within the old model command and control paradigms. And I think the deballization of CEOs that is currently probably happening in the marketplace, right?
The defenestration, maybe, I think is the word you may be
Yes,
looking for.
the further disempowering
The
of
disempowerment, yeah.
CEOs through boards and shareholders, it will likely continue as long as CEOs don't get the mandate and do not make use of the mandate that they implicitly always have to transform the organization to beta, to decentralize. There will be further pressure to centralize even more. And where does this end? In a tyranny of control. We already have this in most organizations. And I think the misery that the agile movement has declined into speaks volumes of the need that is felt in organizations, especially large ones, to optimize the wrong kind of control.
Yeah, and we
rules,
hear
et cetera, et
committees
cetera.
and rules and all this. And
Yes.
the thing is, that the one of the big critiques
By
that
the way,
comes.
can I add something more? I recently had this conversation with somebody from a company who told me they are implementing matrix structures right now. They're creating a matrix structure, which is a 30 years old concept that was flawed at the time.
IBM doesn't hardly does that anymore, and that's where it came from. I know. So you're saying there's a company now thinks that's the way to organize is to put matrices in there. Oh, good Lord.
Yes, they do not have a proper sense of contemporary control, which of course is away from managers and top-down control, hierarchical control, and towards control through transparency, control through the client or the receiver of the value creation, controlled by social density, which are likely the forms of control that we might discuss, right?
Well, absolutely. And I think I wanted to go back. What I wanted to hop in there was you talked about the agile movement, like the assumption now, like that maybe not an assumption, but it's a deference to just the reality of living in an organization that has turned agile teams, which were once groups of masters who valued self-organization and all the 12 principles of agile and the 4 values, that they really the folks who brought that into being, they were not junior programmers. The folks who brought that ethos in, they had a respect for mastery. And I think as agile has, God, I hate using that capital, but as agile software development grew as a practice within organizations, we have now seen what happened as these self-organized or mature teams and groups of people working as masters have come to be feature factories. The feature factory is the bane. Everybody complains about feature factories, but you didn't stand up for yourself in this, or or the organization tried to control your team, said, we're going to control that machine, that factory, and we're going to jam it faster and faster and faster, twice the work and half the time, Mr. Sutherland, and just go faster and faster and faster. And how do you think people are going to feel if you're treating them as gears in a machine, trying to control them and to exert control, fixed targets on top of that? So this is
and budgets, of course, all these things,
and budgets and the idea. Okay, so all right, so that's just the imposition of control on a team that has turned human ensembles into feature factories, and this is what we need to abolish from corporate software development, at least, and I think in general these.
And what I think is on the from a helicopter perspective, what is important from the conversation we are having here is this is not about eliminating control; it's about getting control right. Like somebody from the Beyond Budgeting movement, one of the founders, he once said, the road to self-organization is paved with transparency. Yeah. So you need transparency to get self-organization done. That is control. It is control. Self-organization is control, not by yourself, for yourself, but within a group, a team, ideally, in an ensemble.
An ensemble.
Density is a way of control between people, equals, peers. Peer, you could call it peer pressure, peer control. All those. By the way, all these words have a nasty sound. Some people,
but this is why I think the music thing makes total sense, because we are bonded together in creation, in the act of co-creation. And John and Paul, the Beatles, they didn't always get along at like, there was this dynamic, there was social density, that because of that social density in a small team, they made this beautiful music, and then there was this whole system around them that supported it.
Yes,
and the idea of that a team, multiple teams with strong bonds within them, within the team, inside the team, and within teams, that is so much more stable and strong of a control mechanism than a top-down prescription.
Yes, it's much more effective, much sharper, much faster in a way. I think Eric Trist once said this, that a small team can exert a control that a superior, a manager, a supervisor can never exert, because, of course, the team members are involved in the same work and in the interactions directly. They are in the back and forth of communication all the time, in the resonance that you have in a jazz group. By the way, I saw a jazz concert this weekend, Joe Lovano and a totally great band, high caliber bassists, 3 bassists on the stage. It was a terrible concert. They didn't even, interestingly, they didn't quite make music together even. It was a terrible concert. Everybody hated it. I think only the musicians didn't notice that.
Well, as much as I would love to hear 3 bassists together, that's a leap.
It was a strange constellation. 2 drummers, 3 bassists, and there was one song in which they literally had just a solo. Nobody else played, and everybody had of these 7 musicians had a solo, one after another. They didn't even play together, which was, to me, the ultimate backward sheet. It's like a command and control organization, right? Everybody works in parallel,
silos,
not ensemble, really.
What
you do, right?
So that's the perfect example. So that your experience as a consumer or a fan of that style of music,
yes,
and you're like, I do not want that. I'm regretful that I paid to go to this concert.
Why are they not playing together? Hey, they were all great musicians, don't get me wrong, right? There's 7 great musicians on the stage and producing nothing together.
Communicating.
It's what happens in most organizations today, in most large organizations run by command and control, right? It's a silly thing. Yeah, and it's terrible thing, by the way.
So this brings me into something that a criticism that I hear when I talk to people about decentralization of organizations, about organizational democracy, is about the budget, the finances. Somebody owns the money, and that there is a need for, we have the financial control. So we're talking about
I like to call it remote control.
Organizational remote
But
control.
I have the budget. I'm pressing the button. I'm cutting the cost. Why isn't profit growing? Why isn't margin decreasing? Why is fixed cost rising? I don't understand. I have remote control, and you don't have it in complexity. It's impossible, right? Organizations are not machines.
Well, and you mentioned transparency too. So the idea of I have control because I have the money, and only I have the keys to that money, and only I or in my committee or whatever, the folks who are in this status group who are affiliated, that only we have this money, and you don't get to know how much the other teams get. You don't get to know that team, so you are forbidden from that. And all this talk about in Scrum about inspection, adaptation, and transparency, which are the roots of it, which are the great parts of Scrum, that transparency, if it only goes so far, how on earth is a team supposed to make sense of the real business value it's delivering?
Yeah, and what I have already said in this show before, I find it so, let's say, so stunning that after 20 years of Scrum or so, right, still these agilist concepts have not even remotely contemplated that teams should have control over their time, their own time, and their finances. I mean, the time is controlled by a decent Scrum team, ideally, right? Which is not happening. But finances and the knowledge that there must be profit and loss kind of thing in every team that develops product, right? So, but this is not even touched upon by agilists. So, but can I go back? I admit that I took notes while you were talking. I didn't.
No. Well, that's fine. So you listen. You listen to you people out there. I know you listen to me, and you will listen.
Yes.
So please.
No, I just wanted to be honest that for a moment I did not listen because
I saw you writing. I saw you. I knew.
And it's not a lack of respect. It's just that you got me thinking with this thing that you evoked in me, the remote control thing.
Yeah.
Remote control. What is it? It's by bosses, committees, rules, standards, plans that are remote. As opposed as in Toyota, for example, where the team sets its standards themselves. They are the only ones to set the standards. There are no rules. They have and we might still think about the vocabulary. What is the opposite in beta of remote controls? It is intimate controls or embedded controls or team controls or however you want to call this. I think we
self-control.
Think, of course, self-control. Yeah. But we might think of other words, right? The opposite of remote. What is it? Yeah, and that means self-control, team control, social control, transparency, which provides everybody with control. So it's not hierarchical remote control, but embedded or intimate controls, and there are plenty. And of course the control of the client, which is embedded in a way as well, because the value creation flows towards the client, so the client controls the time and quality of prices.
Okay, so I was virtually writing while you were talking just there, because you're talking about the wording for control, and I'm thinking about, well, it is a control relationship, right? So there's a manipulative relationship when a person with the controller, I am manipulating this controller to try and make you do something. I am manipulating this, as opposed to I am in an intimate relationship with those
with each other, for each other, on eye level, or
very
followed. Not what is it?
Power over, power with.
Over, but power with, right?
Yeah.
So these are the distinctions. Yes. By the way, I had another idea while we talked with the idea of three structures in an organization. In org physics, we might say that there are obviously three kinds of control. Formal structure, there is a kind of control. In informal structure, there is a kind of control. And in value creation structure, there is a kind of control. And smart organizations know how to distinguish and separate these controls. So in formal structure, you would have something like compliance control. Yeah, that's the legal responsibility of the CEO, and others have legal authority and duties. Yeah. In informal structure, the social structure of the organization, there's of course this social peer pressure control and social density in a strict sense, social density. And in value creation structure, you have these things like teams. So you have team control. You need the transparency of results for this to be exerted. You have, in a way, in value creation structure, you have the client controlling the outcome. And of course, for the periphery cell, the external client is the controller, and for a cell in the center or team in the center, the periphery is the controller. By the way, the first software developers, did you know, overwhelmingly women? Did you know that the first software
Ada Lovelace,
they
yeah.
were also called controller because they controlled the machines, I think. I'm not quite
Yeah.
sure why that came, but the first software developers weren't called software developers, they were called controllers. Interesting, right? Yeah, but that's just a historical side note with no use. It's Trivial Pursuit. Really.
Well, trivia is fun. So, and again, the talk of control again, it leads directly into, you just talked about it a little bit. There's control, there's power, there's authority, then there's legitimacy of that authority, and what is the source of the power? What is the source of that? And you talked about mastery-based authority, and control, and then we're talking about, if you have mastery-based authority within a cell in the periphery, that cell has a relationship. There is a relationship. Then there's a dance between the market and the periphery. So but that's a controlling relationship. But that's a consent. Well, I mean, we talk about
have control, right? You cannot.
And that is the. I hear this, and I blows my top when I hear this criticism about self-organization and self-management. That's just uncontrollable. It's uncontrolled. It's anarchy. It's all this
sloppy thinking. Sloppy thinking. Yeah.
It is sloppy thinking. It is based on an assumption that there must be this paternalist kind of control, as opposed to, well, no, we're talking about a stronger sense of bonding and social density, that it is much more. If we, in a cell in the periphery, we have a profit and loss because we're generating revenue, and we have that transparency, and we know what's happening, and we care, and we give a shit, that I think is a precursor to being in a decentralized organization. You have to give a shit, and to grow your mastery. But that is so much. It just gets me excited to think about being in an organization or helping an organization develop that sense of agency, responsibility, mastery, so that you can take control as a group, power over your own destiny, steered by people who you care about and who you want to be on a journey with.
Yes, and you need this kind of control of the team. That's why Toyota always has these end-on cords, the so-called end-on cords, where they can stop the factory, the production line, so to speak. You need the control given. I mean, when I started working in the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable 20 years ago, my colleagues had established this peculiar word that I disliked and that everybody hated in a way. But it was highly useful, I think. And that it's not decentralization. Decentralization we use a lot, but the other word we do not often use in our community either, and it's called devolution.
Yeah, devolving.
Yeah. So to devolve the power, the authority, and the control to teams and the stream of value creation in a way, that the teams of teams, or the stream of teams within value creation structure. So the idea of devolving and devolution is absolutely fundamental for the matter of control, right? You need to devolve control. You can never get rid of control. We might hate the word control by now because it's so much loaded with command and control notions that you cannot not.
I'm in control.
Yeah, it's like this Václavic sentence that everybody knows: you cannot not have communication, right? You cannot not communicate. And the same goes for control. So the question is not to have more control or less. The question is, do we exert the right types of control given the actual level of complexity in our value creation? And for most organizations, those levels of control, those types of controls that are deployed are ineffective. We need to devolve decision-making to teams. We need to devolve that's why we need transparency, to devolve decision-making and power and authority and understanding and knowledge to teams. Yeah.
Well, and it's this thing about, we're talking about, I think there's another discussion yesterday that was interesting about transformation of an organization versus building from scratch. You build beta, and you talk about every organization really is beta at the beginning as it is born. You're born beta, and then you become alpha.
Yes, there's something that we call naive beta.
Naive beta.
That
Baby
is
beta.
for startups.
Baby
Yeah.
beta.
Baby beta, yes. Naive beta, yes.
So I'm trying to think where I was going with that, but I think the idea of this melting of control is interesting, and I think that the whole baby, you threw me off at the baby beta thing, or I threw myself off at baby
Sorry.
beta. No, that's okay.
It's like Baby Yoda. Sounds cute.
Baby Yoda, Grogu. So more about control. We talked about financial controls. We talked about self-control. We talked about what kinds of controls. I think I know where I was going with it. It's like when there is a desire that to sense that something is in a high degree of complexity, that there's uncertainty. We, at a moment we don't have a level of mastery to understand properly what's going on. Some might call that chaos. Well, I mean, confusion, what have you, whatever word you use.
Sloppiness, I like to call it.
Sloppiness. So you talk about, but that. So then you decide to install some kind of like a piece of software, organizational software. Oh, we're going to install a new operating system, right?
Yeah.
So when you say, okay, this structure is broken. We have an old operating system, our alpha operating system. Then we can choose either to upgrade to, from management 2.0 to management 3.0 and say, are we going to just choose the default settings and not think about it? So we're going to either choose the radio button, say just install all the management processes we had before, just a little bit upgraded, or shall we take this section and say, oh, I'm going to do a custom installation, and I'm going to be very intentional about what kind of controls are here, where should controls be, why do we need budgets, what thinking is out there. So the taking agency in organizational design or redesign is that idea of don't just go with the default settings and not think, right? It is incumbent upon you, if you have the authority to do transformation, to think, to make decisions, and not make decisions in a vacuum as you are, but have a whole group process, common knowledge. We're talking about open space. We're talking about open space beta. This is the way to ensure, I guess, the best way that we know to allow that to afford the emergence of an organization that is intentional. So that's what came up for me, is that you're talking about assumptions that we're just going to choose the defaults and just go. We're doing better strategic planning, better strategy execution.
Yes.
Let's think about that. Let's choose the custom option.
Yes, I think you can only, maybe building up on what you just said. There is no getting to better controls without devolving decision making to individuals and who do the work and teams. So this development, open space is a great example of that. That if you participate in an open space meeting, you basically have to decide all the time: do I stay or should I stay or should I go? If you attend a conference where there is a speaker and you have to stay if you are imprisoned in the space in the hall or something like that, you cannot go away. But in open space, you always have to contemplate: do I really want to be here, or do I want to go away? So this kind of devolution increases freedom, or the awareness of our freedom, the potentialities of making decisions in every moment, the awareness of that we have to make decisions at any moment to get things done.
It had an explosion there in your background.
Yeah, and it's a powerful thing. Nobody fails to notice this different in format. And of course, organizations should be built exactly like that, with tons of decisions to make by everyone, by teams, large decisions to be made by teams, and not by committees, directors, executives, right? In a way, the centralization of decision making is an abomination of organizational life.
Well, it is the ultimate expression of hubris.
Yeah.
And an ultimate position of disrespect for the dignity of everyone else other than yourself in the organization. And I think one thing, when we talk about open space, I'm going to geek about it for just a second, because the beauty of it is this idea of the connection of passion and responsibility, and the connection of love and care, that when you go to the center of the circle and say, I'm going to take responsibility for what I love and care about, what I want to show responsibility for, and I am going to go over here and talk about it. And if you are neither contributing value to what I want to do here or receiving value from it, it's not just, hey, it's your option, you can go or not. No, it's your responsibility. It is the one law. It is the one law to take your own personal agency and get out of a place where you're not giving or receiving value.
Sure.
And I think that is a flip for some people too. They feel like, oh, I'm obligated to be here in this room because I chose to be here just for once. I got to show respect for this person. But if you are not giving or receiving value from that person up there, it is your job to go.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a flip, and that is ultimate self-control.
Yeah, self-control is the only, in the long term, self-control is the only legitimate form of control in organizations, right? If we're not talking about compliance, I mean, compliance control is a thing that needs certain roles or positions in an organization, but all else beyond compliance should be based on the principle of self-control. It should be obvious to all of us, as in a democracy, by the way. We're back to the question of politics and democracy, where if a citizen says politics is broken, it's just an affirmation that you are broken as a citizen, right? If you say, oh, the politicians do everything wrong, then it just means that you are not, in a democracy, of course, you are not a good citizen. Right?
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Self-responsibility, we need that in our societies to have properly functioning civil societies, and we need this in organizations, and the means to get there is decentralization or devolution.
And organizations, whether for business, for nonprofit, governmental, this organizational development, we're talking about just organizing people together in a system of human relationships, and this idea of responsibility and accountability with each other, not accountability there, accountability here, that we are accountable for what's happening. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, and this goes into not necessarily business organization, but we talk about politics and we talk about civil organizations.
Yeah.
I had, this kind of came up in the Mariana Mazzucato book, in the Mission Economy book, about the citizen assemblies that are happening. I think Austria is where that's happening most commonly, that there are these small groups, socially dense, small groups of citizens who are taking responsibility for what's happening in their area, not abdicating responsibility to federal, state politicians up there.
And let's not talk of abdicating responsibility in a republic. The citizen doesn't abdicate, doesn't give away responsibility. It's just delegated to professionals in a way,
So again, that comes to the sense of ownership.
Yes, this kind of we also have this in some German regions.
Okay, it's dependency, but I don't know of hardly anywhere here in the U.S. that we're doing that, and I think that's really a shame. And I think that also goes back to the origin of how Mary Parker Follett came into her practice as a social organizer, coming up with the idea of power in small groups and to take local action for getting shit done, and I think she was a woman who was wrong for her time and before her time, but now is the time for that thinking to come into real being. And
she wasn't wrong at the time, but today we can still make good use of her insights.
Well, we can't, but no, for her time back in the 1900s, she's getting all the slings and arrows and the disrespect, and that, I think, is what I mean by being the wrong person or the right person at the wrong time, with all the disrespect that came from being a woman in the 1910s. So.
But in the 20s, I think there was a little era for this, and that went away in a way during the 1930s, and then especially in the US everywhere really after World War II, there were these reactionary times as well. Remember McCarthy and so on. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So and now we have to seriously contemplate all these ideas, because we need it. Yeah.
Yeah, we need it. Whew, 49 minutes. We could probably go a lot farther. I think maybe it's a good time to talk about what's next here in this forum. That we've got a couple plans going on. I know there was because of your talk yesterday on our Hatchery Live with Jose Real and Guillermo Urchi. I had a talk over there a couple weeks ago. We want to bring Jose and Will into this space and have a talk about whatever it is that they wish to talk about,
Yes.
and kind of
Yes.
back and forth on that. That's
We
one.
might have them as guests in some future episodes.
So we may play together. The other thing I wanted to talk about, we alluded to it, was the book club, the next iteration of the book club happening in November. That we're going to continue with Andre Gabor's Capitalist Philosophers. We could talk about Taylor and Follett all day, but this maybe will bring us into how Taylorism became Hammer and Champy, and how it has continued on, and the other threads of humanity and human relations and how that sticks together. That's on November 28th. So we got that. You've got some stuff going on in November that the quick start, I know, is Relative Targets quick start November 30th.
Yes, Relative Targets, which is related to our topic of control today.
Yes.
On the 30th of November, I will do this 2-hour online course, which is called Relative Targets Quick Start. You can look it up and join. I think that would be a good investment of time. We will cover the basics of the relative targets approach to performance systems, and there will be ample opportunity to get questions answered about it as well.
It'll be a nice teaser to the full-on Relative Targets course that we will be hopefully offering very soon.
Yes.
And yeah, so with that, I'm cool to land this ship. What would you like to say in terms of?
Thank you very much to all listeners and viewers, and see you again next week.
All right, we'll see you next week, Niels, and I'll send you off into the guest room where we'll come back later, and I'll say bye to everybody out there. Wow, what a conversation. I had a lot of fun. I know Niels did too, I could tell. If any of you out there want to get in touch with Niels or me regarding the BetaCodex, regarding open space beta, cell structure design, relative targets, all of the things that we do in our consulting with Red 42, please reach out to us on LinkedIn. And at least for me, that's the best place to get me. I go hang out there a lot. And with that, I welcome you to engage us in a conversation. And as always, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. Be well.